I thought I was just stealing a quiet 10 minutes beneath a lazy ceiling fan, letting the afternoon hush fold around me like a warm quilt. Then I heard his voice. Mom. And when I opened my eyes, my son Long stood in the doorway with something pressed to his chest. I had no idea that what he was about to say would turn an ordinary day into one of those hinge moments that quietly change a family's future. Before I start, do me a favor so I can picture you while I tell it. Drop a note in the comments and tell me which city you're watching from. Are you in Tulsa or Tampa, Boston or Bakersfield? I love knowing where you're listening from. Feels like we're all sitting together on the same porch. The room was dim and calm, the kind of late light that makes the dust look like slow snow. I was resting on top of the bedspread in my jeans, shoes off, arms crossed under my head, just listening to the little sounds of home, the click of the hallway thermostat, the whisper of the air vent, the soft tick from the bedside clock. It smelled faintly of clean laundry, and the lavender sachet I keep in the drawer. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't really awake either. Then Long cleared his throat. Mom, can I come in? There was something careful in his voice. He's 30 and tall now with a squared set to his shoulders that makes him look like he's constantly catching a fastball you can't see. But in that careful tone, I heard the little boy who used to knock on my door with sticky palms and questions too big for his mouth. I sat up on my elbows, smoothing back my hair. Of course, I said, and patted the edge of the bed. What's that you've got there? He stepped inside, closed the door gently with his heel, always the polite one, and came to sit where I patted, leaving just an inch of space between us, like he wasn't sure how close to be. In his hands was a small beat-up shoebox, the lid taped at one corner. A faded sticker that said S in red letters that had turned the color of dried roses. He held it like it was breakable. Maybe we both were. I was in the garage looking for my old drill, he said, and I found this on the shelf behind the holiday lights. It's yours. I think it's yours. It has your handwriting. He swallowed. I didn't open it much. I saw enough to know I should ask. I took the box and felt its weight, light but full of years. I knew the handwriting he meant. The looping S I used when I was Knock Hartwell at 19, and every letter I wrote imagined its own stamp and road trip. There was a time when I packed pieces of myself into envelopes because I didn't know how to say them out loud. When Long was a teenager and the world made his temper a quick flaring match, I wrote to him even if I never mailed a word. You can open it, I said after a breath. If you read anything, you and I do it together. Fair enough. He met my eyes and nodded. Fair. That word settled between us like an agreement you sign without paper. I peeled the tape, lifted the lid, and there were memories stacked like old postcards. Letters with my crooked dates in the top right corner. A photo of Long at 7 with a missing front tooth printing around a corn dog. A folded program from his 3rd grade winter concert. A small notebook with a buckled elastic band. I felt a sting in my nose the way you do before you cry. But I didn't. Not yet. Do you remember that night you stormed out after dinner? I asked, thumb skimming a letter dated the week he turned 16. I wrote you this the next morning and never found the courage to put it in your backpack. Yeah, he said, looking down. I remember. I was wrong. I was loud and mean. And I was 16. We both were loud, I replied. And a little smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Do you want to hear what I wrote? He inhaled, then nodded, hands clasped like he was studying them. He didn't look like a child. He looked like a man who had walked straight into a hard conversation and decided not to turn back. I unfolded the paper. The sound of it was softer than I expected, like the paper had learned how to be quiet from living in a box. Dear Long, I read, feeling my own words now as both author and audience. Yesterday was a storm inside our house, and I contributed my share of thunder. I see you trying to be big and strong when the ground under you is still moving. I want to be a better roof for you. Love, Mom. I looked up. His eyes were shining. I forgot you used to say things like that, he said. A better roof. You always deserved one, I said. And then he did something that startled me in its simplicity. He reached out his hand and rested it over the edge of the letter where my signature was, like he was touching past me through paper. He didn't rush. He didn't perform. It was a steady, present gesture that asked a question without words. Can I be here in this with you? Yes, I said, though he hadn't asked out loud. Be here. He took a breath, and for a second I felt the room settle into a kind of shared bravery. The fan hummed, the light leaned across the dresser. Somewhere 2 houses over, someone revved a leaf blower like it was a bad idea. Long cleared his throat again. I found something else, he said. He reached into the shoebox and pulled out the small notebook with the buckled band. There are lists in here. Chores, bills, groceries, and things you were scared about. It was my lifeline for a while, I admitted. When your father left, life suddenly had 1,000 tiny holes. So I wrote them down, and each time I plugged one, I put a little check mark like I was building a boat. He flipped to a page and silently traced a line with his fingertip. Get the car inspected. Replace the porch light. Call the school about meeting with Mr. Whitaker. Buy shoes for long size 9. He looked up. I didn't know you kept track like that. You weren't supposed to, I said. And I felt no bitterness in saying it, just the truth. Sometimes protecting your child means your body keeps score in secret. But you know now. He held the notebook like it was an artifact from an ancient civilization where love looked like receipts and reminders. Then he set it down carefully and turned back to me with that squared shoulder courage again. I came in here to ask your permission, he said. For what? To say some things you may not like, and to ask you for something I think we both need. He waited, watching my face as if we were driving a narrow road. And he didn't want to scrape the side mirrors. Long, if we're going to do this, let's do it well, I said. We take turns. No interrupting. If either of us feels overwhelmed, we say pause and break for water. And everything said is said because we love each other. Deal. He smiled. Small but real. Deal. He went first. He talked about the year he moved out. How he said independence when he meant escape, and how he told me he was fine when the truth was a one-room apartment that smelled like old takeout and a job that made him feel like a number. He admitted he'd been angry at me for staying in the house where his father's absence hung like a picture we never rehung. I kept thinking you chose the house over starting fresh, he said. And I know that isn't fair. I listened. I kept my hands folded and my jaw unclenched. I let his words settle on the bedspread without rushing to tidy them. When he stumbled, I said, I'm here. When he asked if it was okay that he felt both love and resentment at once, I said, 2 things can be true. When he finished, I said, thank you for trusting me with that. My turn was quieter. I told him about the nights I would sit at the kitchen table doing math on the backs of envelopes, trying to make winter coats and dentist visits add up to one steady breath. I told him about the time I let a sink full of dishes soak overnight because I needed one small kindness from future me. I told him I stayed in the house not because I loved the house but because I didn't want him to worry he was losing everything at once. I wanted one address to feel like North. I said a place he could aim for. He blinked fast like he was keeping his eyes from overflowing, then laughed a little in the way people do when they come upon tenderness by surprise. You always were the compass, he said. Even when I pretended I didn't need one. We took a breath then, literally. One big inhale, one slow exhale. I felt the room stretch a little, like it found more space than it knew it had. There's more, he said, and this time he looked nervous. He rubbed a thumb along the seam of the shoebox. I've been seeing a counselor for a few months. I blinked, not because I was shocked. Therapy is one of the kindest gifts a person can give themselves, but because he had chosen to tell me. Now, here sitting on my bed with my old notebook between us. I'm proud of you, I said, and my voice was steady like a level table. I hope you keep going. I am. And well, Hui, my counselor, he asked me what I was carrying that didn't belong to me. First, I said nothing because you know me. Then I started talking about Dad, and I realized I'd been carrying his leaving almost like a badge, like proof I was tough. But really it was a stone in my pocket. That's a heavy thing to carry for so long, I said. I've had my own stone. He nodded. I think it's time we put them down. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small envelope, cream-colored, my name written in his adult handwriting that still leans left like it's reaching for something. He placed it in my palm. I wrote this for you last night, he said. I want to read it aloud if you'll let me. I looked at him, at the man who used to jump off the couch like it was a mountain and now sits with both feet flat on the floor like he's rooted. Yes, I said. Please. He unfolded the paper and cleared his throat once more. His voice at first was careful, then warmer, then honest. Mom, he read, I grew up in a house you kept standing. I know I made it hard sometimes. I confused independence with silence. I made jokes when I should have made time. But I'm ready to know you not just as the person who paid the water bill, but as a whole woman whose laugh is a thing I want more of. I want us to have a different kind of evenings now. Not just updates and weather but stories. I want to ask you questions I've never asked, and I want to answer yours without rolling my eyes. If you're willing, I'd like to start this week. Love, Long. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear darkened the paper where his signature was, smudging the C and Long into a small crescent. He looked alarmed, some reflex from boyhood, and reached for the tissue box without me asking. He didn't fuss. He didn't apologize for making me cry. He just waited, which might be the most respectful thing a person can do. I'd like that very much, I said after. I would love to know you the way we both deserve. He smiled again, bigger this time, and then he did something else I didn't expect. He reached back into his pocket and pulled out his phone. One more thing, he said, showing me the screen like a kid shows a scraped knee for inspection. It was an email thread. The subject line was simple. Meeting. I found him, Long said. I found Dad. I sent him a message last month. I've gone back and forth about telling you because I didn't want to hurt you. And I didn't want to do this behind your back. But I think I needed to know if I could look at him without asking him to be someone he can't be. He swallowed. He wrote back. He's sober now. He lives 2 hours away. He said he'd be willing to meet with me and with you if you want. I told him I wouldn't ask you without your say-so. For a heartbeat, the room went very still. Even the fan seemed to hush. It wasn't anger that rose in me first. It was a kind of deep old ache that I didn't like to speak to because it always cried too easily. Then layered right on top of it was something cleaner. Relief that Long hadn't been carrying this alone. That he'd waited to put it on the bed between us like a map we could look at together. Thank you for telling me, I said. Thank you for trusting me with this. I set my hand on the shoebox and felt its edges under my fingertips, steady and worn. I can meet him. But we set the rules. We choose the place. We leave if either of us says the word. And we go in as ourselves, not as past versions of us. He nodded, eyes bright. Hui suggested a diner off the highway. Neutral ground. Noon, lots of daylight. No expectations except civility. I told him I'd confirm after I talked to you. That sounds about right, I said, and a quiet laugh came out of me, surprised and a little shaky. Who knew all these years later we'd be planning a meeting like it was a dentist appointment? Maybe that's good, he said. Maybe it means it's just another thing we can handle. We sat there for a while in a companionable hush, the kind you earn after saying true things. Long took the letters and slid them back into the shoebox, careful not to bend the corners. He kept the little notebook out and set it on my nightstand like a promise. Then he stood smoothing his jeans with his palms. One more question, he said, almost sheepish. Would you come for a walk with me before dinner? Just around the block. No phones. We can talk about nothing or everything. Yes, I said, I'd like that. He'd offered me his hand to stand up the way he used to when he was small and stairs looked like Everest. His hand was warm and sure. When I stood, we didn't let go immediately. We didn't talk about it. We just let that small quiet contact say what it needed to say. I'm here. You're here. We can do this. As we stepped into the hallway, the house looked the same as it had an hour before. The thermostat still clicked. The front door still stuck a little at the top of its swing. But something subtle had shifted, like a window that had been painted shut for years had finally been pried open. The air felt different, lighter. On the sidewalk, the maple trees shook their leaves like coins in a friendly pocket. We walked without hurry, our steps sensing up the way they do when two people have decided to keep pace. He told me about a podcast he liked that made him laugh in traffic. I told him about the neighbor who insists the raccoons are unionizing. We passed Mrs. Trang's yard, where she keeps that patriotic metal star on the fence, and waved at her husband, Nam, tinkering with a radio he's been just about to fix since the Bush administration. Ordinary details stitched themselves around us like a soft coat. When we turned the corner back toward the house, Long exhaled. I feel better, he said. Me too, I said. We paused at the front steps and looked at the porch bench with its peeling paint. We should sand that, he said. New coat before the fall sets in. You read my mind, I said, and then I added because I knew it mattered to say it out loud. Thank you for calling my name this afternoon. You could have texted. You could have kept going, but you came to my door. He looked at me the way a man looks at a person he respects. I'm glad you answered. Back inside, he checked the time and squeezed my shoulder once. Quick. A punctuation mark that said the conversation wasn't over. Just paused. I'll make us something easy for dinner, he said. And if you still want to, I'll email him back. The diner noon. We'll take 2 cars. We'll have a plan. Send it, I said. We'll make a plan together. Later, after the dishes were washed and the last light left the kitchen window, I went back to my room and picked up the notebook. I flipped to a blank page, uncapped a pen and wrote a new list. Not of chores. Not of bills. A different kind of list. Questions to ask. Long favorite childhood memory. What song do you play when no one's listening? What made you laugh this week? Then I wrote one more line in neat letters. Tomorrow diner at noon. Bring courage. Bring calm. Leave with whatever is honest. I set the pen down and turned off the lamp. In the quiet, the house didn't feel like a museum of old decisions anymore. It felt like a place people lived in, people who were willing to call each other by name and say the tender thing first. I lay back, the ceiling fan tracing its patient circles, and felt something in my chest I hadn't felt in a long while. Not certainty, not relief. Exactly. Something like an open door. If you're still with me, don't forget to tell me your city in the comments. I'm going to sleep now because tomorrow at noon there's a diner 2 hours away with a window booth waiting for us, and I don't know what will happen there. I only know that when my son called my name today I answered, and that simple choice made the rest of it possible. When morning light slid through the curtains, I was already awake, lying still, thinking about the promise we had made. The diner meeting was set. Noon 2 hours away. I could feel the weight of it in my chest, heavy and restless, but also steady like a stone you decide to keep in your pocket for courage. Long came into the kitchen before coffee had even finished dripping. His hair was damp from a shower, his shirt tucked in like he was bracing himself for something important. We didn't say much at first. We didn't need to. The air between us held all the words we had already spoken the day before, and all the words waiting for us on the road ahead. Ready? He asked softly. As ready as I'll ever be, I said. The drive to the diner was quiet. Trees whipped past, fields rolled out wide, and now and then I caught him glancing at me like he was checking if I was still steady. I reached over once and touched his arm. Not for comfort, not for guidance, just to let him know I was present. That little gesture was enough. The diner was everything you expect from a place that had probably looked the same since 1975. Chrome trim, cracked red booths. The smell of coffee so strong it lived in the walls. The bell over the door rang as we stepped inside. And there he was, Long's father, my ex-husband, the man who once filled my days with hope, and then left me carrying too much alone. His hair had gone fully gray, his face thinner, his eyes softer than I remembered. He stood when he saw us, and for a second all I could do was stare at the space between the man I knew and the man sitting in front of me now. Lon, he said. His voice was quiet, uncertain. Long. Long moved first, offering his hand. They shook, and I could see both relief and hesitation flicker across my son's face. I slid into the booth across from the man who once broke me and felt the strangest thing. Not rage, not longing, but a calmness I hadn't expected. We ordered coffee because starting with something ordinary felt safer than leaping straight into everything else. The waitress poured, left us to it, and the silence stretched before the first real words came. I'm sorry, he said, voice rough, eyes steady. I know that's not enough, but it's what I need to start with. For a long moment I didn't answer. I looked at Long instead. He was watching us both, shoulders tight like he was holding up the ceiling. I reached for his hand under the table. His grip was warm, firm, grateful. You heard us, I finally said. But you don't owe me explanations anymore. You owe him honesty. That's what today is about. Long nodded. I didn't come here for stories about the past. I came here for the truth. And so it began. His father spoke of rehab, of nights alone with silence so loud it nearly drove him back to the bottle, of trying and failing and trying again until the days of sobriety finally added up. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just told the truth in plain words. I watched Long listen, every muscle taut, every word filtering through years of silence. When Long finally spoke, his voice cracked but didn't break. You left me when I needed you most. I told myself I didn't care. But I did. I still do. The man across from him lowered his head. I know. And I'll spend whatever years I have left showing you that I know. Something shifted then. Not fixed, not erased, but shifted. Long released a breath I don't think he realized he was holding. We didn't stay long. Just enough time for coffee to cool in half-empty cups, for words to be spoken that had been trapped for decades, for a bridge to be built. Not sturdy, not finished, but a beginning. Back in the car, Long looked at me. Thank you, he said. For coming, for not walking out, for being the compass even now. I reached over, brushing his shoulder the way I did when he was little. We both carried stones for too long. Maybe now we can put them down. The drive home felt different. The world outside the windows looked the same. Fields, trees, sky, but inside something had shifted, lightened. For the first time in years, the air between us wasn't crowded with unspoken things. That night after dinner, Long and I sat on the porch bench with its peeling paint. He leaned back staring at the stars and said, "It feels like we finally opened a door that's been locked for decades." I looked at him, my son, my grown man, and felt pride and tenderness swell inside me. "Yes," I said. "And I'm glad you were the one to call my name." And there, under the quiet sweep of night, I realized something. Healing doesn't come all at once. Comes in moments like these. Choosing to answer when someone calls, choosing to sit and listen, choosing to begin again. That was the unexpected gift of the day. Not reconciliation, not perfection, but the chance to grow closer to the man my son had become and the woman I still was. And I wouldn't trade that for